Welcome to Polymer Hands-On. This is the third talk, which is not really a talk because it's a hands-on coding session. Haha. Hopefully most people have their laptops. If you don't, I might do a little bit up here and show examples, but the purpose of this was really to give all of you the opportunity to actually build something with Polymer. That's kind of like the steps in learning something. First you get an overview, then you actually do it yourself, and that's how you retain the knowledge. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to build, again, this awesome Google map, and it takes about 20 minutes to do it. So we have plenty of time. 20 minutes if you probably know what you're doing. Might take about 30 minutes, hopefully. But this is a good opportunity. If anybody has questions about web components, Polymer, anything, feel free to ask me questions. I'll be happy to answer them, and we can have an open forum, open discussion about them. And for anybody who wants to get started, this is the link to the code lab. So the Polymer team is actually the ones who produced the code lab that we're actually going to go through to create the Google map. And the second link here is my solution of it on GitHub. And I'll give everybody a minute or two to actually open those two links. I made it as short as possible for you to type it in. Even bigger for the people in the back. And so when you go to the code lab, it's pretty self-explanatory. It already has steps to go through in order to create the Google map. And how the code lab does it is actually they use the Chrome Dev app, Chrome Dev Editor. I never heard of it before using this own code lab, but it's actually pretty good if you follow along. It makes it real easy because you don't have to install Node, you won't have to install Bower. You get basically everything for free right in the editor. So you can work through that example. Alternatively, if you already have Node installed and you have Bower installed, well, you just need Node installed. You can go to my GitHub and check out master, and that will give you basically step 2, like where step 2 starts. And then I created a branch for each of the steps, which I'm just one step behind what the Google guys call their step. And we'll go through it together in case anybody has any questions. I think everybody's got this. I'm going to open up the link then. So if everybody opened that link correctly, you would be presented with this, the Google Code Labs. And this is the Google Maps one. I should have probably linked right to the main site. So they have a site called It's Hackademic. So here's their main site, and you can actually Google this, It's Hackademic. And this was created by the Polymer team for, teaching about Polymer. So the talk that I gave, the first talk that I gave was actually available here as part of the tech talk, so the speaker deck. And right now we're going through the curriculum here with the code labs. And there's a whole bunch of different code labs. I chose the Google Map one because it's the coolest and you actually don't have to use JavaScript at all. But if you get done early and you want to try other code labs to get more experience with Polymer, feel free to go through and do other ones. So, all right, everyone should be here and started. And it's a race. Whoever gets done first, do we have a prize for them? Free beer this evening. So whoever gets done first gets to have beer first. First in line. That's it. Okay, thanks for coming. I'll see you guys later. Let me know if you have any questions. Thomas will be here to answer them because he also knows Polymer really well. And maybe I'll work on this too. So So yeah, again, you can use the Chrome dev editor, which, heck, you could do it both ways if you want. Chrome dev editor does a default app, so it creates the index file for you in the main.js and the styles. So it makes it a lot easier to get started, and it creates the shell of an application. And I'll wait until everybody either has GitHub checked out or has this up and running. Let me click on the other link. How many people are going the GitHub route? Okay, everybody else is mostly going with the Chrome dev editor. Cool. I'm not going to say anything else until people ask questions, say they're ready for the next step, etc. And I'll give one more piece of information. So they ask you to create a Google Maps API key. If you don't want to do that in step 1 on my GitHub, I actually pushed up my GitHub key just to make it easier for everybody else. I'll delete it after this session, but everybody should be able to use that. I guess you get like 500,000 requests or something, which I never go over. But you can grab that from the GitHub. I don't think you really want to try to copy it from the screen. But again, it's on that GitHub link. If everybody opened up the GitHub, I'll go back to the links. I'll leave that up. But it's the step 1 branch, and the index.html file has the API key for Google Maps. So I'll also spend some time just explaining what's happening in step 1. So the first thing that the dev editor created was your basic index.html file. And everything in Polymer is a component. So all these import tags at the beginning are importing different components that we're going to use throughout the HTML document. So you can see we're importing iron icons, toolbar, button, checkbox, fab, tabs, toast. I don't even know what paper fab is. There's so many elements. That's the thing. There's an element for that. And then it's basically stubbing out or giving you a sample app with tabs and everything and showing you a basic layout of an app. Zoom in? Yeah, let's see if I can. I can't Command plus in there. Yeah, I wanted to bigger font size. Oh, I think you can do bigger font size. I can do that. Is everybody past step one? They got the Chrome Dev Editor installed? Cool. You can hit the run. Ah, yes. Cool. All right, and then at any time you can hit play, which will load this up in the browser, which it did. And so this is your basic starting point for a sample Polymer app, which gives you these pretty tabs. And then you're supposed to delete all this, or most of it, in the next step, using Google Map. Cool. All right. Power update. So everybody got to installing the Google Map? Is everybody ahead of me already? I need to speed up? Okay, fine. Whatever. I'll stop talking to everybody. And you probably already stole my map key. And I'm not going to tell you about the one bug that exists. You're going to have to figure that out on your own then. Your key. So I think even just getting to this step where you have a map up is actually pretty cool and powerful at showing you how awesome web components can be. And probably everybody's past me, so I'm going to continue. And just to go over again how great Polymer's documentation is, if you want to get information about how to use the Google Map Polymer element, they have documentation. All their documentation for each of the components is at elements.polymerproject.org. You can Google it, and it gives examples of how to use the element, the API reference for what properties you can change and add to it, which there's a ton, what methods you can call on it, and what events it has as well. So it actually fires off events that you can listen for and do stuff with JavaScript. Did everybody get to the part where you had to write JavaScript? Yeah, they'll take that away in the next couple steps where you actually don't have to write JavaScript. Just showing you other things. So you should have something like this at the end of step 4. I'm hoping I'm ahead of people now. I'm at the end of step 5. I added the paper input boxes to the bottom left, and yours may be a little bit lower than mine. If that is happening, the reason is because the paper cards actually define a position in their native element, so you have to override it in order to make it absolute. So simply done, just go into the styles and put an exclamation important right after the absolute. And yeah, I just want to show why that is an issue. So paper card, if you actually use the DOM inspector, and you can see what's going on is the default style that Polymer is using with their paper card is setting the position to relative, which has more specificity than the position absolute that we're trying to give. I probably have to file this as a bug with Polymer team, so I'll eventually do that. And I better keep going to keep up with everybody. So everybody past step 5? Okay, we got some, maybe no. Everyone's really quiet. At least everybody is working on this, right? Okay, cool. All right, anybody having trouble or have any questions that they want to ask?
Is custom style. For what does this stand?
Custom styles. Yeah, so custom styles allows Polymer to share styles with multiple Polymer elements. We're not using it in this demo, so it might just be there, but it shouldn't hurt anything. I don't know if they're actually using it, though. But custom style was, again, like if you had shared font files that you wanted to use or font sizes and colors, you could do a shared style and import that into each of your Polymer elements so they all use the same font and same font size. And like I said, they have great documentation on how to use custom styles, so read the docs. Yeah, and that's why, like I said before, oops. Okay. Polymer is easy to get started with, but takes a while to master.
I have installed it with that Polymer CLI, and I have that directory Bower components, but it doesn't have the Google Maps in it. Where do I get that?
So, okay, his question was that he's using the Polymer CLI, and he wants to know, where do you get Google Maps? And the answer to that is you would just do Bower install space Google-Maps. And that should do it. Let me see. Yeah, I think that actually worked. Google Maps is actually, there's another person who did Google-Maps. So you're going to want to get the Google version of it. Let's see how we get that. It's just called Google Map. And yeah, so if you want to install it, you can actually install it with that command, Bower install --save, which will save it into your bower.json file, Google Web Components / Google-Map. And the way I found that was by going to, okay, I have too many windows open now. I went to the elements, and I went to the documentation for it, and in the documentation, there's the link here, the Bower command to actually install it. So any Polymer element that you want, most of them you can just do like paper-tab or paper-whatever. But if you need to know how to install it, you can go right to their elements catalog and get the Bower command for it. So link it to like the Google API to do the auto-enhance. They don't unfortunately do that. I don't know if they offer that as part of the API to do auto-completion.
Would it be a separate Google Map pointer then?
Yeah, I think so. Google Maps, like they have the directions and they have that nice pretty print, but they don't actually offer an API to do that for end users because it's very proprietary and they want people to use Google Maps. But you can research it. There's documentation on how to use the Google Map API, and it provides all the information of what resources you can get back.
But how would I link that into this? Imagine I have my own auto-completion REST service line somewhere. Is it possible to put it in here somewhere? Because there are just a bunch of tags.
That's a good question. So the question is, if you're using a paper element and you want to do auto-completion on it, let's say you have your own API that you want to make calls and get responses and update, let's check the docs. So going going back to the catalog, paper elements, I know they do auto-completion with something in here. So there's paper input. And does this do auto-complete? Yeah, so there is an auto-complete property. I'll try to make that bigger. If you're using paper input behavior to implement your own paper-like elements, bind this to the input is iron input auto-complete. I'm not exactly sure how to answer that, but you could obviously do it through JavaScript. So it's a key down or on value changed. Every time the value changed, you make a fetch call to your API, you get the result back, and then you present a dropdown. I'm not sure they have an element that currently does it, but I hope that answered it. But they might. I don't know. Even the element catalog for Polymer, there's hundreds of components, and there's hundreds of other open source components. So it's just a matter of searching for it, and I'm sure if you spend 5-10 minutes, you probably could find one. Yeah, so the question is, we have this paper input thing. How do you actually interact with the input element? And that's a good question. What happens is, so the paper element actually wraps a native input text box. And they expose all the properties that you would use on the paper element. So you can actually know when the value changes. You can get key down, key up. You can check for key enter, etc. So you can just do it as if it were an input element, the same way you would with an input element, because, again, it's just a DOM component. And if we actually look in our example, my favorite way to figure things out is to actually just use the DOM inspector and go in. OK, this is the old version. So you can actually just inspect this. And here's actually the input element somewhere deep inside the paper input element. So that's kind of like the nifty part of web components is you only see paper-input, but inside of paper-input is a whole bunch of additional markup to make it pretty, which also has a native input element. And it does fancy things, like right now when we select this, it does the blue line underneath that kind of animates. There's additional attributes that you can add to paper element, which would take the start address, and actually if you start typing, it actually automatically slides up. So that's another material design paper input type feature. And all the Polymer elements have different things and different ways to customize it that are too numerous for me to possibly know them all. And that's why I always say, go read the docs, because they have great documentation. And I'm sure somewhere they have auto-completion. And if not, it's probably easy to build.
General question, what's the best way to debug? With Polymer only the console or the tools?
I always just use the console. Yeah, the developer tools are great. And if you have something like this, let's see how good my foo is. I don't know if everybody knows this, but if you hit Command P, you can open a file. And somewhere in here we'll have paper-input. So paper-input is right here. And this is the source code of paper input. Well, yeah, so paper input actually uses behaviors. This is what I was saying also. Paper input is just a thin shell with material design, styling, and CSS. And the actual implementation for it is two additional files, this iron input or iron form element behavior and paper input behavior. So you can actually use that same behavior and have your own look and feel on your own my paper element, which doesn't have the material design. But I was trying to open this really quickly. Paper input behavior. Paper input dash behavior. So if I wanted to debug this, I would just open the file, which contains the JavaScript logic. And somewhere in here, there should be like a value change handler. It's really hard to debug on another screen with really large font size, but then I would just put a debugger there and start modifying it, and it would stop right there. It's as the same as debugging any JavaScript code, which makes it great and easy to do it. And the cool part, again, is we're not actually using ES6, so the markup that you write is the exact same markup that you see in the browser. It's a lot easier to debug. All right, I'm going to take a break. Keep coding. So I was going to show you more of the Xfinity Home website and how we built a production app with Polymer. We have my wife's parents staying with us, and apparently they broke our touchscreen or something, I don't know. But right now you're using that template DOM bind, and what that does is create a container so that the components can talk to one another. But when you create an actual full app, typically what we have is we have one single element that we put on the page, and that's our XH app. And that represents the whole single page app, and it has all the components in it. And that's kind of like your mother container that does all the app logic that needs to happen. So I'm actually going to view source on this because it's even better. Yeah, so this is our index.html page. There's some logic to check which branch to grab, but our main HTML, where's the main HTML? So, yeah, so our body tag, and then there's our XH app Polymer element, and let me blow that up. And then we did a splash screen outside of Polymer, just to make it really fast to load. One of the problems with Polymer, and they talk about this with their app shell design, if you are going to build a really big website, so the Xfinity Home has over 200 components, and it takes time for the browser to get all those components and to register all those components before it can initialize and show something. Are we supposed to be done? I think so. We could be done. I don't think so yet, but there's still time left? Yeah, I don't think anybody claimed the prize of first beer, so. Is anybody done? Oh. Nobody claimed the prize. Okay, everyone gets free beer tonight. Yeah, so I'll just keep talking. That's what I do. I just keep talking. So if you are going to build a production level app, one of the things that you have to know, and Polymer is starting to create documentation on their app shell architecture, what happens is, again, the browser will download all 200 elements, and it will initialize all 200 elements. And what that takes, some browsers, it could take a full second before it will actually render anything. So what you want to do is you want to have your home page or your index page be downloaded as one file, and that might use 30 or 40 of your elements. But it will render much quicker than having to download all your components if you're doing a single page app like we are. And then what happens is you lazy load the other Polymer elements as the pages are needed. And that's described in the Polymer documentation. It's called the app shell architecture, in case anybody wants to Google it. I think most people are done, which is cool. I wish my security system were up so I could go over that. All right. Are there any other questions that somebody wants me to answer? Because I could wrap it up. Everybody can just finish, and you can check out the other code labs too on your own time and dive deeper into Polymer. I think it's a really great technology. Web components in particular, I can't speak highly enough about them. So definitely start using them. What's your?
I had the input boxes before, but not the map.
Uh-huh.
I have the map, but the input boxes disappeared. It looks like they are behind the map because in the source code they are there.
Yeah. So where's your styles?
Style.
Yeah, I'm just going to walk around. I can do the questions. So the question was how to get the paper, what was the wrapper around that paper thing? I'll pull it up on my screen so you can see.
I'm taking the mic so you can concentrate on answering questions.
Cool. Yeah, I'm trying to pull them up. I have way too many tabs open and browser windows, and I have no idea how to. There's the Chrome Dev Editor. So yeah, check to make sure you have this paper card, and then the paper card styles need to be added. And then do the position absolute on the paper card style. I think we're pretty good. Awesome. Cool. Yeah, and if anybody had any trouble or wants to find the final solution, again, it's on my GitHub. It's like step 5, whatever the last step is. I'm not going to say any more. Can I wrap this up? Thomas, can I be done? All right. It's over. Time. 3:35. My presentations are done. Thank you all for coming. You've been a great audience. Yes, Germany is beautiful. I actually really like it here. My wife is having a fun time.